back to Glove Up Garage. We're back to work on the Lincoln project, our '04 Lincoln Town Car, rebuilding the total lost car. And the first thing I'm going to do before this goes into the frame shop is start cleaning up some of these parts. I'm still waiting to hear back from a couple of local shops that have frame racks if they can get me in anytime soon. So in the meantime, to keep busy, I'll start cleaning all the grime and grease off of this part and the inner fenders so that I can get them hung back on the car as soon as the frame is done. And for those of you that have never worked in a body shop before or not really familiar with how painting works, this thing has to be absolutely clean of all dirt and dust and grime and oil in order for the new white paint to adhere to it. I won't need to primer this part because it's already been primed from the factory, and I can go over top of this like beige color with the white because it's been primered, and you can see the factory primer right there, this gray part that was underneath of the hood bumper. They actually painted this part with the hood bumper installed. I went ahead and popped them out. No big deal. I'll touch them up later if I need to. So I started off using kind of a mild cleaner, just using a glass cleaner. And that's why this side over here, the driver's side, is much cleaner than the passenger side. I've already started to clean it up. And when I get into this a little deeper, I'll use a more aggressive cleaner up to the point of something, say like a Mean Green cleaner or a Castrol Super Clean. That'll be about as strong as I'll go. I won't need to wipe this down with lacquer thinner right away. I'll just wind up using a wax and grease remover that's specifically made for going underneath base coat and for painting before I obviously put down the base coat. So for now, I'm gonna pick up and start cleaning this a little bit more. I've got to find some brushes to get down inside of these stands where the hood bumpers go. That side, you can still see there's a lot of grime and grease on the inside of it. And I'll get inside all these little nooks and crannies, get that all cleaned out as well. So that's what I'm gonna do for now, and I'll come back when I'm done with this part. The core support's looking much more clean now. This is about the second or third time that I've wiped it down with the glass cleaner. It looks much better than it did. There's still a lot of grease and grime built up around these hood brackets and around the latch bracket. That's pretty much all that I'm going to be able to get to tonight. I'm going to come back tomorrow when it's a little warmer out here and hit this with a more aggressive cleaner. Probably step up from glass cleaner to like a Formula 409, maybe some Mean Green cleaner. I just want something that's not going to leave a lot of residue. Mean Green's pretty good about cleaning up with water, so I may have to just spray this down once I'm done with the next step of cleaner. The problem when you get into Mean Green and Castrol Super Clean, if you let it sit on this base coat too long, it'll actually start to lift the base coat, and it can actually lift the primer if it's on there long enough. So I don't want to do that. I just want to get a majority of this dirt and grime and stuff like that off. I want to leave the base coat attached to the primer. That way when I put my white over top of this beige, it's got a really good adhesion, and I don't have to worry about the beige lifting up and causing some problems in the future. Again, this is one of those areas, it's not really seen. I'm kind of going overkill with this. I mean, a lot of people would probably just paint this black, throw it under the hood, but hey, when I pulled the original one out, it was painted white. I'd like to paint this one white and put it back in its place. I had moved this over. I was working kind of in front of one of my heaters yesterday. It got up to about 50 degrees in here, and it was a pretty nice day. So now that it's dropped to 30 degrees outside, it's nice and cold in the garage. Had to have both heaters going for a few minutes to get it warm enough to work in here. And I've got it over here on the stand, and you can see something that I noticed too. There's a big spot of primer right here, some base, and then primer there. Well, it looks like what they did is they had the header panel actually bolted to the core support, and then they painted it as one unit. What I'll do is get this cleaned up. I think I'm going to go ahead and paint it separate from the header panel, and then put the header panel on after I paint it also. Just a little extra touch, something to clean it up a little bit. The next thing that I've been working on this afternoon is the grill that came off of that hood that we got in our parts lot. Now this grill is not perfect. The chrome is peeling right here. And then down at the other end, there's a really small crack, and the chrome is peeling around it also. I went ahead and took the Lincoln emblem out of it because it was delaminating, didn't really look that good. What I'm going to do is use Castrol Super Clean, like I just talked about. It will actually strip paint, and it will also take this electrostatic chrome. Over top of this chrome that you can see on most of the parts on the outside of the vehicle, there's a layer of clear coat on some of the chrome. This particular chrome, I think it's just straight electroplating that they do, and that's why you get bubbles like this. There's really no clear over top of that. But Castrol Super Clean will actually attack this electroplating and the clear that's underneath of it, and it should lift the plating off of the plastic below it. And that's really what I want to do, is get it down to just the bare plastic. My thought is I'm going to have to paint the hood on that vehicle, and I want to do the surround of the grille in that pearl white, and I want to do the teeth in a metallic black. Just a little subtle something different from your everyday Lincoln that you see driving around. I'll probably do that same thing to the license plate panel on the back so that it matches. I might leave all the chrome on the bumpers, just the moldings that you can see here. I might wind up leaving those just chrome. I may wind up blacking them out too. I don't know. I'm just gonna play this by ear. I've still got the factory grille that came off of this car that's in good shape. So I've got another grille to play with in case I mess this one up and I decide, you know what, it's gonna look fine with chrome and we'll just put the chrome grille back on. But for now, I'm just playing around with that. So I'm gonna start soaking it with the Castrol, and we'll see how it turns out. The core support is clean. I've got it all scuffed down with one of these red scuff pads, and I've got it wiped down with wax and grease remover. So basically it is ready for paint if I was to go ahead and paint it today. Unfortunately, it's just too cold for that. This is the wax and grease remover that I'm using. Pretty much any wax and grease remover will work. Something solvent based, it's gonna eat through a lot of this nasty grime and grease. Got down inside all these little hollow areas, I guess you would call them. Really the whole top of this is hollow, but behind the headlight supports in these areas, I got down inside of them the best that I could. I mean, you're just never gonna get this thing 100% clean. So next thing I'll need to do, get that off the stand and set it off to the side, because the header panel needs to be set up there and cleaned just as bad as that core support does. It is absolutely covered in the same grease and road grime as the core support was, because they were bolted together. They were on the front of the car. I'll get started on that next, get it cleaned up, and then we'll start cleaning and scuffing it for paint. Header panel is clean now. I've got it all wiped down, wax and grease removed, went ahead and scuffed it with that same red scuff pad. It's cleaned up quite a bit. I'm really happy with it. I like the way that it looks. I think we're pretty much good for paint on this. The decision now is, do I go ahead and paint it separate, or do I bolt it to the core support? And it's going to depend upon whether I can get some paint this week, and it really depends upon the weather. It needs to be at least about 65, 70 degrees out here in the garage in order for that paint to dry. I'm going to have to cover up the Cobra, move the Lincoln and the Marauder outside so that I can get everything painted without overspraying all my cars. Overspray is not fun to clean off. And I definitely don't want to paint it outside. It's just going to be too cold for that. If it was about 60 degrees outside, I could probably open the door, go ahead and shoot it, and then bring it back in and let it dry in here with the heaters going. But it's just not going to be that warm this week. So for now, it's ready to go. I'll put it off to the side, move on to the next piece. Next part I'm going to start working on is the front bumper. And I want to get all the trim off so that when I go to paint this, I obviously won't paint white over the chrome trim. Also need to get these fog light block offs out. This car didn't come with fog lights. And I need to get the plate bracket off. Now I'm gonna leave this bracket attached to the bumper. This is how it actually attaches to the fender. It's held on with these pop rivets. I won't need to get that off. I'll just make sure to clean it really good before it's painted. And I was looking over here in this area and I noticed some cracking. And this is a little concerning. That means there's some body filler in there. And I came around this side and it's definitely, the body filler's kind of flaking off. So it's something that I'll have to get all this filler off of the bumper itself. And I would imagine there's probably some scratches or something right in this area. I don't know that I'll necessarily strip all of that filler down to the bare plastic. It'll be one of those things I'll have to work as I go and take a look at it. Now, as far as the bumper goes, the rest of the paint, I'm gonna be fairly aggressive. Use some 320 to get a majority of the paint off. You can see there's a spot of primer right here. And then the VIN sticker that is on the bottom of the bumper has been painted over, that sticker right there. So I know it's got a whole nother coat of paint over top of the factory paint. when you're dealing with these plastic bumpers, urethane bumpers and stuff like that, you really don't want to stack a ton of paint on top of another layer. About two to three layers is tops. So I know I'm at 2. I know I got filler. I need to get that stuff out of there before I move forward and put another coat of paint over top of it. In all reality, we're putting 3 coats of paint because it'll have the base. I'll have primer, I'll have that white base, I'll have that pearl, and then over top of that will be a couple of coats of clear. So pretty thick coating of materials is going on the bumper. I want to make sure that I get everything as thin as possible so that it doesn't flex and do what's called a spider web. If you look at the back bumper of the Marauder, kind of in the middle, you might have seen it in some of the previous videos, where this paint flexes, it actually creates almost a spider webbing effect. And the lighting in here is not really good, but if you look right there below Marauder and the reflection of that bottle, you can see it looks like there's cracks, almost like a spider web effect. And that's what'll happen when you have too much paint that's on these bumpers. It'll start to flex just from the natural driving of the vehicle, and eventually it will do that spider web effect. I'd like for that not to happen to this after putting all the time and trouble into this bumper. So I'm gonna start there. I'm gonna go ahead and get this de-trimmed and start looking for any additional damage. Once I get that chrome trim off on this side, I might find something, who knows. But that's where I'm gonna start. Get all the trim off, go from there. Bumper's de-trimmed, and I made another discovery. So when they painted it, it looks like they never took the plate bracket off. There's a pretty good paint line right here, and you can see that it's starting to flake on the edge, which means I'll definitely need to sand the majority of this paint off. There's a pretty good paint line right here as well. So they did the same thing with the trim. You can see that there's a paint edge right here along where that trim popped in, and it's starting to peel and flake. This bumper is going to be a blast. I'm going to have to sand this thing all the way down to the factory paint and base coat and clear coat just to make sure that all this stuff doesn't lift, because I can see so many spots on this thing where it's just starting to peel up. Right here around that spoke, there's a couple little spots that I noticed, and then along with the filler that we've got over here on the left side of the bumper, it's going to have to be stripped down as much as I possibly can. So got my hands full on this one. The bumper is going to be a little bit of work, but again, for the price that I paid for all these parts, I didn't expect perfection. I expected to do quite a bit of work to make it fit the car and get it ready for paint, especially going from one color to the next. It is what it is. I'll get through it. I'll make good content showing you guys how to strip bumpers down. We'll go from there. Just an update on the Cobra engine, in case you don't see it in the background for the next few videos. We're going to take this to the machine shop tomorrow. I've got it all loaded up and ready to go. The crank is up there in front of the heads in its own little box, so it doesn't roll around and get busted against anything. I'm gonna go ahead and have him check the specs on that crank just to make sure that the last shop polished it good. If it doesn't need anything and he signs off on it, then great. We've got the pistons and the rods in here, and then the main caps. Went ahead and left the valve stem seals in that bag there. They'll take a look at those. They may be able to use them to rebuild the heads. I'd like for them to go through the heads while they're in there. And then we may not even reuse those pistons. It's going to depend upon what this shop says about the bores of the cylinders. And like I've said in previous videos, a couple of bad spots, they may be able to hone them out. They may be able to bore them. We might have to wind up sleeving it. I'll let them make the decision, and I'll update you guys once we get to that point. To wrap up the last part of the video, I want to go over the frame sheet on this vehicle. I was able to borrow this from a friend of mine that has a frame rack with the laser measuring system. Hopefully I'll be able to get the car into his shop and do that measurement and do the pull there too. But to kind of explain how shops measure these vehicles out, each one of these points on the frame, and basically this is the top down view of the frame, this is the side view, but each one of these points you measure it in an X pattern or straight across, whatever it happens to be. The cool thing about this sheet is it gives you a guide to go off of. Sometimes there's a bolt, a rivet, a hole, whatever the case may be, but you just take measurements from one or more points, or actually two or more points, to figure out if the front of this has been moved over, or if it's been moved over this direction, or if the frame is up or down, whatever the case may be. Those points of measure will change depending upon the movement of the frame. The other cool part about this frame sheet is it also gives you measurements of the body opening. Now, for instance, this is the under the hood view, the engine compartment. This will come in handy when I go to bolt my fenders and my core support back up. It's going to allow me to know if I've got everything square, and then I'll be able to look at the doors to see how they line up to the fenders and what body work needs to be done there. This will also give you measurements across like the A pillar, the B pillar, C pillar, your deck lid opening, your rear window. You know, there's a bunch of stuff here, rear window or front door and rear door. But anyways, that is the frame sheet, and we will definitely use that to do some measurements on this vehicle. Of course, I don't think the body is bent. I believe it to just be the frame. We'll get to that point in a very short amount of time. I'm lining up a couple of appointments for a trailer and lining up an appointment with a frame rack. So I'll continue to prep some of these parts. I'll make some more content about the prep of that bumper and everything else I've got to do, like the fenders. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more episodes on the Lincoln. Definitely hit the bell icon to be notified when we upload a new video. I appreciate all the comments and the subscribes. Thank you all for the support. Catch you on the next one.